The Odyssey DLC added a huge variety of new animals to the game, and even buffed some of the classic animals by adding new special trainable abilities. In total, excluding insects, there's 40 new animal types. Since there's way too many to fit into a reasonable length video, I'm going to instead focus on the ones that I think are worth taming, training, and hunting. If you enjoy this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also, be sure to check out the membership option. Members gain access to all new videos immediately after they're finished, which is at least a day or two before they become publicly available. You'll find a link for that down in the description. Let's first take a look at which animals are worth breeding for the purposes of producing food, whether through their eggs or to butcher for their meat, or ideally for both. The flamingo, heron, and penguin are all solid options for breeding if your intent is to collect their eggs for nutrition. Flamingo can be found in arid shrubland and tropical swamps, the heron in temperate swamps and boreal forests, and the penguin, well, I had trouble finding penguins in the wild. Let me know in the comments if you've had better luck. One thing to keep in mind when farming these three birds, they aren't treated like livestock, so they can be zoned wherever you please, making them a bit easier to control than your standard livestock birds. All three effectively have the same stats in regard to eggs and meat. You'll get the same nutrition over time from their eggs as you would get from chicken eggs, but with the added benefit of more meat produced per day of growth. Penguin, heron, and flamingo each consume 0.45 nutrition per day, but between eggs and meat will produce 0.6 nutrition per day, giving you a surplus of 0.15 per day. Compare this to the chicken, which consumes 0.22 nutrition, but between eggs and meat will produce 0.425 nutrition, giving you a surplus of 0.205 per day. So in terms of pure efficiency, the chicken still has a better ratio of food output versus food input. So sure, chickens are still better than these three birds, but if you're looking for something unique, these three are completely viable still. There is one subtle bonus that these three birds have over the chicken. Since they produce eggs that are 0.5 nutrition, they're much more efficient in terms of storage and the amount of nutrition you can store in one cell or on one shelf. A stack of penguin eggs will have 37.5 nutrition, while a stack of chicken eggs will only have 18.75 nutrition. If you're making simple meals, the eggs with 0.5 nutrition are better. For fine meals, the eggs with 0.25 nutrition are better, and for lavish meals, the 0.5 nutrition eggs are better again. Both are not great options for nutrient-based meals since one meal requires 0.3 nutrition, but no matter what, you'll be consuming 0.5 nutrition worth of eggs. Meaning no matter what, you'll be losing nutrition for every nutrient-based meal you make out of eggs. Lava snails make for a highly efficient farming livestock since they produce 0.47 nutrition per day from meat, and only consume 0.32 nutrition, leaving a surplus of 0.15 for each day of growth. That assumes you're butchering them as soon as they reach maturity and are finished growing. Gestation takes just over 6 days, and they can have litters of up to 3. Also, the lava snail does mature fairly quickly, taking only 13 days. A mature lava snail produces 126 meat when butchered, which ends up being 9.45 meat per day of growth. The only downside to the lava snail is they don't produce any leather, and they're awfully slow. At least if they escape their pen, they won't make it too far. These lava snails are only found in the wild of the lava field biome. As a side note, the lava snail is a fantastic option for keeping them on your ship since you'll always end up with more food than what is required to keep them fed. If you do keep them on your ship, to increase efficiency even more, take part of the meat that you harvest from them, combine it with a vegetable, make some kibble to feed them. That's actually pretty gross. Both the muskox and the moose could potentially be used as a meat livestock animal if you're playing on a colder biome. The muskox can be found in the tundra or glacial plains, while the moose can be found in boreal forests, cold bogs, tundra, or glacial plains. They made my list not because of their quality, but because a moose farm is such a cool theme for a run. And muskox have the same stats, so I threw them in too. Both of these types mature at the same rate of 20 days, and they have the same gestation rate of just over 6 days. Also, they both only have litters of 1. There aren't really many differences between the two, except the muskox does provide a mid-quality wool while it's alive. When butchered, both the moose and the muskox provide 350 meat and 100 plain leather. This gives them a meat per day of growth of 17.5. Compare this to the buffalo, which is only at 16.8 meat per day of growth. Since cows also produce milk, they'll be a bit better than the muskox or moose in terms of overall nutrition, but keep in mind, the cow also produces 16.8 meat per day of growth, making them produce a little bit less meat over time. I do have to say, both the muskox and the moose feel a bit contradictory since they're better on colder maps, but they require year-round grazing to be fully efficient sources of meat. Once you start feeding them grown food, it's impossible to compete with the other bird options for food efficiency. But if you're less concerned about food efficiency, then the muskox and moose are great options for farming. You can feed them kibble over the winter, and then you'll end up netting a very small nutrition surplus. But I find it's generally more worthwhile to farm one of the previously mentioned birds, or chickens, if you're looking purely towards efficiency in your animal farming. Next up we have utility animals. I've categorized these as utility animals as they provide either a resource that has some value other than meat, or they have a specific skill that offers a unique benefit to the colony that you cannot find in other pets. The armadillo is a great option for farming since their leather is equal to heavy fur in terms of protection. You can tame them, but you can't train them, so they'll only be usable as livestock. Armadillos have a gestation time of 5.66 and can have up to 3 babies in a litter. They only take 13 days to mature after birth, meaning you can very quickly build a large population of these things. They produce 4.2 meat per day of growth, which gives you 0.21 nutrition if butchered as soon as they hit adulthood. Unfortunately, they consume 0.32 nutrition per day, making them quite a bit less efficient food-wise than other animals. That being said, it's the leather we're after, not the meat, so this isn't much of a drawback. As I mentioned, armadillo leather has the same protection stats as heavy fur, but it does perform better in terms of heat insulation, and performs worse for cold insulation. One last thing to note is that the armadillo leather has a slightly lower value than heavy fur, giving the armadillo leather a better value to protection ratio. Armadillos can frequently be found in arid shrublands, so they are not too rare or difficult to find. But unfortunately, they do require 8 animal handling, so you'll need a highly skilled animal trainer to tame these creatures. Mink offer an alternative to chinchilla if you're looking to farm leather for its value. Mink are pretty easy to find since they aren't terribly uncommon and they can be found in temperate forests, swamps, boreal forest, and cold bogs. Mink leather isn't quite as valuable as chinchilla leather and it has slightly less beauty, but it is significantly better for beauty and value than all the other leathers. Mink matures the same rate as chinchilla, both taking 13.3 days, but the chinchilla has the advantage in litter size with litters up to 3, while the mink only has litters up to 2. Lastly, the mink provides 21 leather when butchered, which is the exact same amount as the chinchilla. So if you're looking to make some money, you can farm these little creatures, take their leather, turn it into clothing, and then sell it, or just straight up sell the leather. Megavoles have quickly become a personal favorite of mine, no pun intended. You'll only find them in the wild and glow forests, but you'll also occasionally see them being sold by passing traders. They are really easy to tame, requiring only 4 animal skill, with no chance to manhunt. In addition to that, they're quick to reproduce, taking less than 6 days to give birth, and have litters of up to 2. They take 13 days to mature, so all it really takes is getting your first breeding pair, and then you'll have as many adult megavoles as you want. Now the question is, why tame megavoles to begin with? They aren't combat animals, and they don't haul or rescue, but they do have the unique ability to be trained to mine. Other than megasloths, they're the only animal that can do so now. Compared to megasloths, they're definitely the preferable option since they eat less and are much easier to tame. Once you do get them mining, they don't require much at all and are happy to graze on grass. Other than eat, they will mine all day long and sleep all night. They won't mine quite as quick as a highly skilled mining pawn, but it's nice not to have to worry about them ever breaking or needing much maintenance. All in all, I think Megavole are one of the best animals that were added with Odyssey. Last up for our utility animals are the sea lion and the seal. They both have advanced trainability, meaning that you can train them to haul and rescue. They don't make for the best attack animals, but what they lack in combat power, they more than make up for in utility when playing on aquatic maps specifically. Both sea lions and seals have 200% movement speed in water. This makes them absolutely fantastic for hauling and rescuing through water. Seals can also be trained for comfort, which is an added bonus. If you're playing on an archipelago or an atoll, both of these could make for very potent pets. Now that brings us to the combat animals. These animals are all animals that can be trained to attack, and can be quite effective when used in combat to support your colonists. The Colossus Toad is really neat because it only requires 2 animal handling to train, which is quite uncommon for combat animals. They have an average DPS of 3.1, placing them in the mid-range of animals that can be trained to attack. Unfortunately, they cannot be trained to haul or rescue without a sentience catalyst, and they have no other special abilities. A pregnant toad takes 5.6 days to give birth, and a baby takes 13.3 days to mature, meaning they're quite decent when it comes to population growth. Even still, if you're looking to build a sizable population of them, you'll need quite a few female toads. One big downside is that they aren't terribly fast, with only 3.2 cells per second movement speed, which is slower than a standard humanoid. All that being said, the best part of the Colossus Toad, they're just downright neat. Who doesn't want to have an army of giant toads? An adult Colossus Toad weighs something like 120 pounds. That's a pretty serious toad. Next up is the gorilla. I think gorillas have become my favorite animal in Odyssey, other than the Megavole. Of all the new animals added with Odyssey, they have some of the best DPS and armor pen, with 4.9 DPS and 20% armor pen. You can find gorillas in the wild, in tropical rainforests, and tropical swamps. They require only 6 animal handling to train, which is one of the lowest of all of the high value attack animals. They can be trained to haul and rescue on top of attack. They can even be trained to forage, and to top it all off, they can even graze on grass. Really, the only downside to the gorilla is that they're one of the slower combat animals with 4.65 cells per second, which, keep in mind, is still faster than a standard humanoid. They take just under 7 days to gestate their babies, but unfortunately only produce 1 baby per birthing cycle. On the bright side, it only takes 15 days to reach maturity, meaning they have one of the fastest birth to maturity cycles of any combat animal. They consume 0.86 nutrition per day, which is just about what a human pawn will eat per day. Luckily, that isn't a huge deal in most scenarios since, like I mentioned before, they can just graze on grass. You just have to make sure to keep a stockpile of food for them through the winters. Though in my opinion, not quite as good as the gorilla, one might argue that the Mastodon is the best combat animal that comes with Odyssey. Excluding the Alpha Thrumbo, the Mastodon has the highest DPS of any of the Odyssey animals, at 6.32 DPS with 38% armor pen. And on top of that, they also have a unique trainable ability called War Trumpet. War Trumpet is an AoE that causes all of the enemies in the surrounding radius to have reduced movement speed and manipulation, making it an incredibly useful combat ability. Add on the fact that they can also be trained to haul and rescue, and you've got a great choice for your next pet. Just keep in mind that they eat a massive amount, requiring 2.88 nutrition per day. On the bright side, they can graze on grass, consuming 28.8 grass per day. On the not so bright side, if you're trying to keep them alive through winter, it's going to take quite a huge stockpile. All in all, the Mastodon is definitely a great choice for a combat animal. I've decided to group the Scimitar Cat and the Tiger together because they're almost identical to one another. Both are decent, but between their rarity and breeding stats, they aren't my top choice for combat pet. DPS wise, they're both quite good, each with 4.67 DPS and 18% armor penetration. On top of that, they're some of the fastest animals in the game, with the Scimitar Cat's 6 cells per second and the Tiger's 5.2 cells per second. The movement speed pairs very nicely with the attack target skill, giving them the ability to quickly lock down specific targets. Unfortunately, the Tiger requires 9 animal skill, while the Scimitar Cat requires 8, which is a pretty tall requirement for what you get out of it. Another downside to the Scimitar Cat, and the reason why I'm personally hesitant to use them, is that they take 10 days to gestate and 30 days to mature. This isn't a huge drawback if you're only planning on using 1 or 2, but if you're looking to fight with a sizable group of these things, you'll need to replace the losses, and that will take quite a bit of time. For small-scale taming and training, the Scimitar Cat and the Tiger are both wonderful options. Once you start looking to scale up, then I think there are better choices. Boghounds are really the perfect choice if you're looking to play in any environment that will have frequent toxicity, since they have 100% resistance to toxicity. So if you're playing on Scarlands or a high pollution map, then getting a herd of Boghounds is quite powerful. They do have a middling DPS at 3.49 with 18% armor penetration, but thankfully they only require 5 animal skill to tame, which is on the low end for combat animals. Just keep in mind that they have a 30% chance to go manhunter on a failed tame attempt, so be careful when you're out taming these things. You really only need 1 breeding pair though, since they reproduce rapidly, with a gestation time of 10 days and litter sizes of up to 4. They do take quite a while to mature at 30 days, which is a bit of a drawback, making them a worse option than other combat animals in biomes that aren't threatened by toxicity. These last 2 can really only be used at very small scales since they require a sentience catalyst to train them to do anything. I've decided to include them in this video because if you do end up getting a sentience catalyst, they're absolutely worth using on these 2 types. Alligators have 4.93 DPS and 29% armor penetration, and hippos have a staggering 5.72 DPS and 36% armor penetration, making both of these types quite potent combat animals. The best part is, they have a movement speed bonus of 125% on water or marsh tiles, making them quite lethal if your map includes large amounts of either of these. Both really make for monster attacking pets, but only if you have access to those sentience catalysts. Unfortunately, offspring of an animal that had a sentience catalyst used on it will also need their own sentience catalyst, so there's practically no hope of amassing an army of alligators to do your bidding. The best you can really hope for is 1, 2, or maybe a small handful of these if you're really lucky. That being said, since both the hippo and the alligator have extremely high DPS and armor pen, they're both really good combat animals if you do get the opportunity to train them. Unfortunately, most of the other attacking animals are as good or better on non-aquatic maps, so Other than cool factor or the water bonus, there's really very little reason to use the alligator or the hippo over any of the new attacking animals. Well, those are all of my favorite new animals that were added with Odyssey. If there's one in the new DLC that I missed that you really love using in your runs, make sure to let me know down in the comments. Make sure you like, subscribe, and don't forget to check out the membership option. Thank you for watching, and see you for the next one.